to John chapters 11. Now, as everyone here can see, we're dealing with a very delicate situation. Because I am not releasing the kids this morning. They're staying right here with us. Now, if you know anything about kids in the service, you know that we're dealing with a time-sensitive matter here. So, we're going to get right to the jugular. John, chapter 11. We've got a hike to go because I want to cover this whole story. We're going to be covering I am the resurrection and the life today. But in order for me to cover this, we're going to have to do a little back history here, and we're going to have to see how this plays out a little bit. So we're going to have to read a bit of scripture here this morning. So grab your Bibles. John chapter 11. We are going to read from verse 1 all the way to verse 44. So if you all didn't get any chance to read this week, we're surely going to make up for that today. The words, we're listening now. Listening ears. You can go ahead and color it. Listening ears. Chapter 1, I'll read from the New Living Translation. A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. Now, you'll remember these two sisters. I'm going to stop here. You're going to remember these two sisters because they were mentioned previously as when Jesus came into their home, Mary, she sat and listened to the teacher while Martha was busy working through the house. She was trying to clean everything and make a meal and get everything ready and prepared. You know how you women are when people come over to the house, all of a sudden everything's got to be clean. And if you are the significant other of a woman, you also know that if you didn't previously have a headache, you now have a headache along with your back aching because you will now have to clean the house also. So, even though it's fine, it's literally fine. But that's where these sisters are from, okay? We've already talked about these. So, there was the whole condition of Mary and Martha, and they come up periodically throughout Scripture because they are constant followers of Christ. They have believed, they know who He is, they've spent time with Jesus, they are well aware of who He is and what His mission and purpose is. So, I want you to take a little bit of that in, okay? So now, their brother, Lazarus, was sick, okay? This is the Mary who later poured, okay? Now later, Mary is going to anoint Jesus before His death, okay? This is the same Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick. So the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, Lord, your dear friend is very sick. Verse 4. But when Jesus heard about it, He said, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from all of this. So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, He stayed where He was for the next 2 days. Finally, He said to His disciples, let's go back to Judea. Let's go back to Judea. But His disciples objected. Rabbi, they said, teacher, only a few days ago, the people in Judea were trying to stone you to death. These people where you want to go just last week was trying to kill you. And you want to go there again? Jesus replied, there are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night there is danger of stumbling because they have no light. Then He said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go wake him up. The disciples said, Lord, if he is sleeping, he will get better soon. They thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping. But Jesus meant Lazarus had died. So He told them, look here, clowns, Lazarus is dead, okay? And for your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there, for now you'll really be able to believe. So come, let's go see him. Jesus walked His whole life misunderstood. People did not understand Him at all. Do you have that problem with you? Because I know walking in my path and in my way, people have often misunderstood me. Is everything okay? What we got going on there?
It's fine.
Calm down. People always misunderstood Jesus. That's going to be a way of life. Even the most perfect man on this planet was misunderstood. So, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, well, if we're going to Judea and Jesus is going to die, let's go and die with him also. You're also going to have people who aren't very encouraging in your life. So with that, when Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, now this is the lady who, when Jesus came to her home, she didn't spend no time with him. She was busy working, okay? But this instance, when she found he was coming, what did she do here? When she got word coming, she went to meet him. I want you to know, he was still a few miles away. Back then, she just didn't hop in her car and take off. She traveled a few miles away to go see Jesus in her time of mourning. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him. But Mary, what'd she do? Well, she stayed in the house. So maybe she's a little upset. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, listen, I want you to catch this. If only you had been here, my brother would not have died. Why do you think she said this? Because Jesus was notorious for healing people, right? We know that Lazarus was sick and he died because of his sickness. So in her way of thinking, Jesus had to be there in order for her brother not to die. I want you to think she's been limited in her thinking. I want you to hold on to that thought, okay? But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. Yes, Martha said, he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day. Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never, ever die. Do you believe this, Martha? Yes, Lord, she told him. I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God. Then she returned to Mary. She called Mary aside from her mourners and told her, the teacher is here and wants to see you. So Mary immediately went to him. Jesus had stayed outside the village at the place where Martha met him. When the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep. So they followed her there. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, she echoes the words of her sister, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing all with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked. They told him, Lord, come and see. Then Jesus wept. The people who were standing nearby said, see how much he loved him? But some said, this man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying? So you see the unbelief in people. There's going to be times in your life where the situation looks ugly, okay? Where the diagnosis might not be favorable. There's going to be times where life is just plain hard and sucks, and you can't make sense of it. No one else is going to be able to make sense of it either, because everybody's trying to wrap their head around this catastrophic problem in your life, or this huge issue, or this battle, or why did we get this tax bill, or why did my roof collapse, or why do we have this pipe busting, and Lord knows we don't have the money. Now the damage is done, and all this stuff. Why? And you're going to have people in your life that can't comprehend with you. Can't comprehend with you, because all these people were sitting there saying, well, if he was here, why wouldn't he come? He knew he was sick. Why didn't he come? Shh. Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb. Verse 38. A cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. 39. Roll the stone aside, Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested. The Lord gave a word, now what happened? Now they're getting a little scared. Now things are starting to become real. Okay? It doesn't make sense. What do you think they're going to find when he rolls this stone away from a man that's been buried and dead for 4 days? Let's see. He has been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible. Just get these two. Thank you. The smell will be terrible. Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. But I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in gray's clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go." There's a lot that happened here, all right? And in the Message, I want you to understand this. In the Message, does anybody here have the Message Bible? No one here? I want you to listen to how the Message reads John 11:25. Well, we're going to wait for Pete to get out of the way.
He's packing.
See you, Pete.
He's packing everything up.
It's okay. We're going to wait for Pete to get out of the way. There we go. We're going to have some distractions, and that's going to be okay. But we're going to get through this. Miss Kim, did anybody hit the record button?
I did.
Miss Kim, you can clearly see how desperately we miss you. We're praying for your health and a speedy recovery, and we just want you to know that we miss you and we love you. And also that there is a need for a backup child teacher, child worker. All right, the Message, John 11:25. You don't have to wait for the end. I am right now, resurrection and life. The one who believes in me, even though he or she dies, will live. And everyone who lives believing in me does not ultimately die at all. Do you believe this? He says, I am right now, resurrection and life. The author of resurrection and the source of life is Christ. He makes this claim. Here you see a whole bunch of people saying, Lord, if you'd have just been here. Why? Why? Because they seen God heal people. They seen Him give sight to a man who had never seen from the day he was born. They watched the miracles. They watched people get saved. They watched people get healed. They watched the blind walk, the deaf hear, the blind see, the lame walk, and the deaf hear. They seen all this, but they had not yet seen the full manifestation of the power of God. And what does that look like? What does that look like to you? No one had yet seen Christ call a confirmed dead man. This would be like somebody already embalmed. We're shutting the casket. We're heading to the gravesite. We're going to go ahead and put him in the ground. That's, once you know you embalm somebody in the physical sense, that's it. All life is removed. That's it. They're gone. They are officially departed. The same process was considered. It was intentional that Jesus waited 2 more days. In the scripture, you'll see that He waited 2 more days to go. He wanted to make sure that it was beyond the possible reasoning of this man was just sick and, oh, he came back to life, or he had a slow heartbeat. No, he was confirmed dead. They rolled the stone over. It was as good as done. They were in the process of mourning now. And they typically mourned a deceased relative for approximately about a week. Some nobles and some rulers would mourn a little bit longer, but the customary process was for a week. They were in the middle of mourning. It was over. But they were so limited in their thinking and in their experience with Christ. They couldn't believe that Christ could call a man from death and bring him back. Why? Because they were limited in their experience with Him. They didn't know the full power of God. Casting Crowns has a song that's called The Voice of Truth. And in there it says, I will listen and believe the voice of truth. What is dead in your life that God is speaking to? You see, God, in His Word, gave a clear depiction. He speaks to dead men in order for them to come alive. That's all that the gospel is about. Speaking to us where we are, in death, to come alive. So where are you at? What is God trying to speak to life to? What is He speaking to bring to life in your life? For me, I had laid down my business. He spoke it and it came alive. For the longest time, this church, he was speaking to come alive. And I said no. I refused. I said, Lord, but wait. I was Martha. Lord, but wait. He said, roll the stone aside. He said, Tony, plant this church. I said, Lord, but wait. But wait. What are you giving an excuse for? My excuse was, God, I don't know how to run a church. God, I'm not a good speaker. God, I can't do this. I'm inadequate. I don't have an education. I kept giving God an excuse. But wait. What are you trying to hold God off for? What is he trying to call to life in you that you keep pushing off? Maybe it's a dream. Maybe it's a desire. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a job change. I told the Lord. I was in a position there for a while. It was a gravy position. I worked in an office. And it was right here in town locally. And I worked there out of the elements Monday through Friday, gravy schedule. The pay was boo, but it was a very easy job. And I knew that at the end of the week I was going to get X amount of dollars. And the Lord said, it's time for you to move on. And I said, God, you're going to have to pry this thing from my hands because I'm not leaving here. Listen, I'm not leaving here until they either kick me out or the doors close. Well, I want to let you know that not only did one of those happen, both of those happened. They ended up laying me off and the company went under. And I said, all right, but Lord, wait. It was the death of that and I'm still giving excuses. But wait, I have 4 kids. I have responsibilities. I don't have an education, God. Then he was calling me to do this. Then. And I kept saying, but Lord, wait. You see, a lot of times, the Lord wants to call resurrection in your life. He wants to bring life to a particular area. And then all of a sudden what happens? We get nervous. Why? Because it's about to get real. It's about to get real. You know those moments where you walk in, you're like, oh, it just got real. Like, for instance, for me, I love hunting. Absolutely love it. Haven't been able to do it in quite a few years, but I love hunting. Now, I went out, and when I realized that hunting was more than just a rifle with a rifle, you could hunt with a bow, I said, well, let me go get a bow. So that's what we did. My wife actually surprised me with my first bow. It was a secondhand bow. It was funny because the guy that owned this particular piece of equipment was 6'4" and about 300 pounds. This man could bench press me with one hand, and his draw was all over 3 foot. Well, if you know anything about bow hunting, that's not the typical standard draw. So where the piece is, they call it a kisser button that you put in your cheek, was back behind my ear. I'd put it back here where I could feel it on my ear, and then I knew it was in the right spot, and I had a way of gauging how to hold the pins, the sight, the bow, so that the arrow would go where I wanted. So I learned all this. We practiced for months, and my pap said we could come up and hunt on his property and all this, and we get out there, and I never really thought I'd actually see a deer in the wild, because I've watched hunters, and they always came home with empty trucks. They always had more stories than results. And I kid you not, the first day I'm in a tree stand, I actually bought a tree stand. First tree stand I ever owned. We just put it up. I have more bungees and straps on this thing than you can shake a stick at. I'm pretty sure it held the tree up. It was so strapped in secure place. So I'm up there fidgeting around, looking around, and sure enough, I look out of the tree stand. Oh, there's a deer. It's got horns. What do I do? I got to that point, it's like, oh man, it just got live. So what happens? Your heart starts beating really fast, you get real shaky, you get your bow, right? And this thing has no clue that you're even in the woods, and it's going about its business. And then you get to the point to where you're full draw, and then I'll never forget the thought running through my mind. Because it was like, it's real now. Can you do this? Can you take the life of another being? Can you make a shot that you're happy with? All the practice that you've put in, all the preparation that you've done. Now, I know it sounds kind of trivial, that I'd be talking about hunting in a situation like this, but it was something different for me. You put all this work in, you play the role, and now it's go time. Well, what do you do when it's go time? I took a deep breath. Can you do this? And that's all that the Lord's looking for is a reply. I said, yep. Let it fly. Put that arrow right through that deer's heart. It ran 30 yards and died. Now, it ran downhill 30 yards into a rock bed, and we had to dig it up out of there. But the point and the fact is this, that when it's go time, a decision has to be made. And a lot of times people shy away. They shy away. We were out, and it was New Hampshire, and we went down this trail. And down this trail, they said there was an area where you could swim. Now, New Hampshire, it's north of us, right? It's a little farther away from the equator, so the climate there is a little bit cooler. We get back there, and there is a pool back there, sure enough, but it was about 40 degrees. Water's about 40 degrees. Get back there. We talked this hike that we was going to go swimming, we was going to jump in this whole way down the trail. And we get back there, we're like, I don't know if I'll be able to make kids after this process if I jump in. So we're kind of reserved and reluctant, and we hold back a little bit. And this little girl comes running down the trail, probably 10 years younger than us, jumps right in, swims around, backstroke, flipping around, all kinds of stuff. And here, me and another guy are like shaking our head, how in the world can she do this? She's not freezing. She gets out and walks over. Everybody's laughing at us because we're not getting in, we're shying away. Everybody's laughing at us. And she's like, I love making fun of you kind of guy. She's like, we see you come. She's like, I live right down the street. She's like, I swim in this thing every day. She's like, it's like bath water to me. And I said, well, ain't no girl going to show me up. And in I went. But sometimes you need that push. Sometimes you need that motivation. And we just need to learn to trust the voice of the Lord. That has to be your motivation, the voice of the Lord. Listen to this. Because reason, I want you to write this down. Reason, I don't see anybody write it. Reason cannot comprehend resurrection. Reason cannot comprehend resurrection. Reason is just this. It's based on intellect. Things you have already learned, things you have already witnessed, things you know. It would be that which you are familiar with. That is reason. Resurrection goes directly against these. But why? Because resurrection means to bring back to life, to restore, to renew. Resurrection goes beyond the measure of reason. We may see on social media or know people that are good at restoring things like old cars, homes, antiques. Anybody in here any good at any one of those areas in particular? I am not. I'm good at taking things and wrecking them. I'm not very good at restoring things. But it's not uncommon to see even old relationships restored. But when it comes to people, why is it so hard for us to believe that they can't be resurrected? Rather emotionally, mentally, where they stand, as far as morals. A lot of times we get accustomed to the behavior and habits of people, and it's hard for us to believe in the best for that person. It's not uncommon for us to be biased in a negative light in how we view people. So in this instance, why was it difficult for the sisters to believe that Lazarus could be restored, that he could be resurrected? Because they were limited. Remember I said they were limited? They had only known Jesus to an extent. They thought he had to be there. What we know is Christ is always there. I want to ask you, are there some things you just simply can't believe God for? I'm going to be honest. I used to believe that there were some people God would never touch. He would never call to life. I'm watching these people break as time passes. These people are softening. Their hearts are becoming less hard. I'm watching people change. I'm watching people come to life in truth. And it's something I thought that I would never see. But God has proven that he can get to the hardest of hearts. What is it? And you want to know something I never really thought would ever happen? Me standing here. I thought I had done too much and I was too far gone. I did not think that God could bring anything good from my life outside of my wife and possibly my kids. And I was going to be honest with you, my kids were a little skeptical there too. I'm like, if they're anything like me, my God, help them. But God's grace knows no bounds. And we have to understand that whatever capacity, whatever box we try to put God in, we're not limiting God. Is God does God have a limit? I'm going to say yes. God has the limit that you put on him. It's not that he has a limit. It's that we limit him. What if they absolutely objected? What if they absolutely objected to him rolling the stone away? God, absolutely not. You are not rolling that stone away. We cannot let you do this. We cannot let you disgrace our brother. We cannot be humiliated. We can't go through this hurt and this pain again. No matter how much he tried to convince them, if they would not let him roll the stone away, he could not have called Lazarus forth. So what are you allowing to hinder God's power in your life? Look at the sisters. Our knowledge is limited. We need to give way to faith and listen to the voice of God. I'm sorry. I laugh at some of my notes sometimes. Not everything you think is the truth. Let me say that again. Not everything you think is the truth. Y'all know I love Tony Evans. He gave a story, and he illustrates it this way. A while ago, I was sitting in my living room watching TV, when all of a sudden, it popped on and off, and then just went out. So he said, I got up, fiddled around with it a little bit, and it popped on and off a few more times before he realized that the TV was really messed up. Listen, and it was beyond his ability to repair it. You see, there's going to be times in your life when things are beyond your ability to repair. Am I not right? Relationships go beyond our ability. Sometimes we get a little frivolous. Look how I'm speaking to me. Sometimes we get a little frivolous with our spending, and our budget is broken beyond our own possible repair for the time. Okay? We got into a little bit of financial overhead a few years back where when I was brought up as a kid, I'm not justifying, but this is what led me there. When we were brought up, we only got what was needed on an as-needed basis, and even if that. So when I got a job and started making money, I said, well, if I want it, I'm getting it. And that's just the way that it was. And then I discovered this little trap called credit. And I said, ooh, I don't have the money now, but I can pay it back later. Swipe that straight. And that's what I did. And that can lead you down a very dangerous road. Maybe you're in a situation that appears it's beyond your ability to repair. That's where Tony was with his TV. So he thought, well, guess what? It's time for a new one. He goes on, he says, now he's had this particular TV for about 15 years and it served him well, and he figured, he'd take this as his opportunity to go get him that big 60-inch plasma that he'd been wanting. He's like, so I figured that if I was going to get rid of this old TV, I may as well go ahead and get it in working order. So he called the repair guy who specializes in his particular type of TV, and he was a specialist for that brand. When the tech arrived, Tony explained what was going on, and the tech said, oh, it's no big deal. He said the tech went right to work. I want to put a side note here. Sometimes what seems like such a big deal to us, in the right hands, is no big deal at all. It's common. It's easily handled. So the technician said, here it is, a small disconnection in a wire right here, and I'll have it fixed right up. Tony says, I seen my dreams of a new plasma TV dying right before my very eyes. So he said, I'd figure I'd stick with my plan and fix up my TV anyways, and go through with getting a plasma because they're better TVs. He said, so I mentioned to the repair guy that this was what I was going to do, and I was going to get rid of this TV and get a plasma. He said, because it has a sharper picture. He said, every excuse I threw to this technician, he knew this TV inside and out and gave me a reply. And he said, I fixed your circuit problem, but you might want to wait. I'm not finished fixing this thing yet. I see other problems. He said, well, what do you mean? He's like, it was working fine for us. He's like, it may have been working fine, but it wasn't operating to the best that it could. He said, let me work on it a little bit, and then you tell me what you think. He said, the tech dismantled the whole thing, even took apart the screen. He had a special spray that he cleaned all the gadgets and even the screen with, and then he put it all back together, and he said, and I had a better picture than the day I brought it home. He was like, it was better than new. He said, I thought my TV was gone. I thought it was useless. But when I had the master come and touch it up a little bit, I didn't have to trade it in. Some of us want to trade in our lives and the situations that we're in. We want to throw in the towel on our circumstances. And he's saying, and I know for some of us, things will always seem to be popping up and coming out of nowhere and blindsiding us. But Tony encourages, before you do anything drastic, just let the master work with your life a little bit. He'll show you he can turn, wipe, tweak, clean, fix, and give you a life that looks brand new. Isn't that what resurrection looks like? Despite what your circumstances look like now, listen, you are a masterpiece created in Christ Jesus for good works. All you've got to do is walk in them. It's our responsibility to work out truth in our life. But we often miss the principle that we are his masterpiece. Faith always spearheads your thought process. It always goes after your reason. So what are you thinking about these hopeless situations? What is your thought process on a day-to-day basis? How do you view yourself or the relationships that you have and even your finances, all these areas? What's your thought process? Have you allowed faith to come in and work in your life? We need to acknowledge that 1, we don't know it all. 2, God is all powerful. And 3, anything is possible. Flip over to Mark 9:23. Flip over. It's a few chapters. It's a few books back. Mark 9:23. Mark 9:23. There's the amen.
Amen.
Amen. There was a question here that even puzzled Jesus. This boy, in this situation, he kept going into violent convulsions. He was possessed by a spirit. And the father, in verse 22, says, have mercy on us and help us if you can. And this question, this boggled Jesus. He said, what do you mean, if I can? What does it say? Anything is possible, what? If a person just believes. Anything is possible if a person just believes. We have to move beyond what we think and live on a level of what we believe. God's power rests in what we believe. These sisters walked with Jesus. They'd seen his miracles. They experienced his power, yet they still had no clue as to what he was capable of. So I want to ask you, do you have any idea of what God is capable of in your life if you just allow him? We go back to the limitations. Does God have limitations? Only the ones you set. We get so stuck in our way of living, our thought process, and our routines, and our goals, and our ambitions, that we lose sight of God's plan and purpose, and most importantly, his power in our lives. That's why it's important that we know who we're living for and what life consists of. John 12:25, it's exactly one chapter after our main text. Those who love their life in this world will lose it. Those who care nothing for their life in this world will keep it for eternity. Anyone who wants to be my disciple must follow me, because my servants must be where I am. Get that? My servants must be where I am. He made a distinction. We are to find ourselves in the presence of Jesus. Do you understand that? The sisters kept running around. Lord, if you had been here, if you had been here. This whole time he was alluding to the fact that I was in your heart. I was already here. I was already here. You see, so many times we think, God, where are you? The real question is, where are you? Because God is one everywhere, but he's only where you allow him. Where are you? He says here, my servants must be where I am. God's power is in what we believe. As much as we've experienced God and his power in our lives, we still haven't seen all there is to see. Not in our lifetime will we ever truly see all of God's greatness. Don't fall into the thinking that there is anything God is incapable of, or that we've seen the best of God, or that our best days are behind us. You want to see more of God? Listen, I'm going to take a show of hands here. Who wants to see more of God? Show of hands. Well, at least you're all honest. If you want to see more of God, you're going to have to give more of yourself. If you want to see more of God, you're going to have to give more of yourself. And what does that look like? It means laying down your life however he asks, wherever he points. It means rolling that stone away. It means finding yourself where he is. What is God trying to do in your life? So if you want to see more of God, you're going to have to give more of yourself away. More of your thought process. More of your reasoning. That's got to be turned over to God. What does that look like, Pastor? Well, when you're considering, small scale, when you're considering even purchasing a car or a home or anything in general, whatever, God, should I get this? God, should I go this direction? God, should I spend this money? God, should I take out a loan? God, should I do this? God, should I do that? You start praying more. You get God involved in the process of everyday life. Look, God, this is how I pray now. I don't even pray. When I was first saved, I used to pray, God, give me an opportunity to share your word with somebody today. I'm here to tell you those opportunities exist every day. This is my prayer now. God, let me be faithful and give me the words to say when I walk into the opportunity you give me. And then I step on a job site. And then I start talking to people. And then I start seeing where they're at spiritually. So how you doing with it? I go beyond why I'm initially there. Cut the grass, trim the trees, whatever have you. I go beyond that. I'm looking to see how they're doing. Because a lot of times you're going to find people are hurting. People got questions. They need some help. They need some encouragement. Get to that point. You're like, well, Pastor, I could use some encouragement today. I could use some help. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. You be a blessing to others, and blessings will follow to you. If you cling to your life, you'll lose it. Jesus knew what he was going to do for Lazarus and his family. He was even in their midst physically, yet they still didn't comprehend what he was capable of. They seen him on a day in and day out basis. They had no idea of the power of the resurrection, for they had not seen it. Resurrection power. You don't return the same. When God calls you out of your life of sin, when God calls life from death, the person's never the same. You can see it in the story of the prodigal. When he comes back, he was a completely different person than when he left. And Jesus says, at that point, you never really die. You cannot live in the fullness of the resurrection if you're still holding on to death. You have to let death go. What does that look like in your life? Upon our resurrection through Christ, living for Him, we come into fullness of life. What are the results from a resurrected life? Well, when Lazarus walked out of the tomb, do you think he stank? That was their number one concern that they illustrated, that they expressed, that he would stink. There is no record of him stinking. Upon resurrection, there is no stench of death. Upon resurrection, you will only experience the aroma of God. And that's a life that is seasoned with joy, with peace, with hope, with love, with a future. The results from a resurrected life is a testimony that all can see. A resurrected life lives differently than it did before, because you know what death is and you know what it's not. And now you experience life anew. We have a better grasp of how powerless we are, but yet how powerful God is, because He pulled us from death at just the right time. So we bear the aroma of God, and death has no hold on us. Matthew West has a song, One Step Away from Home. I don't know if we can pull it up. Maybe end it. It's not One Step Away from Home. It's Matthew West. It says, "Hello, I am."
My name is.
Hello, my name is. Oh, that's a good song. I was thinking about that song this week. Do you think you'd be able to pull it up? I want to end with that, because in there he says you're only one step away from home. Where in your life is God calling you to resurrection? There were a million different directions I could have went this morning with I am the resurrection and the life. But I want you to pay attention to the fact that He operated unlike anyone had ever seen Him operate before. So how does God want to operate in your life? What stone do you need to roll away? Where is God speaking to you?